I would say that the mainstream environmental movement and the climate change movement work together, and the grassroots environmentalists are often opposing them. And the reason for this is that a lot of the mainstream environmental movement and the climate change movement are primarily about preserving this way of life, as opposed to grassroots environmentalists who are trying to protect pieces of ground or trying to protect wild nature. And this is a capture that has taken place of the mainstream environmental movement really over the last 30 or 40 years. And it's interesting because the conflict over what should the environmental movement be about goes back to the Gifford Pinchot John Muir split 100 and some years ago. That Gifford Pinchot was primarily that when the national forests were founded and the national park system, that it should all be for wise use, basically to use them as resources for the future. And John Muir was of the mindset that nature should be preserved for its own sake. And this is the split that has been down the environmental movement for a long time. And for a while, the environmental movement was really about protecting wild places. That the John Muir side of it, the nature side of it, the wildlife side of it was in ascendancy. But that's really the last 30 or 40 years as neoliberalism has destroyed everything. Neoliberalism has really destroyed a lot of the environmental movement. And climate change has done that too. Their climate change movement, which prioritizes, again, and they're very explicit about this, saving this way of life over saving wild nature. So what should we do? Well, I think the first thing we have to do, and this is probably going to be my answer to a lot of these questions, is that we should make our loyalty to the natural world, because without wild nature, there is nothing. I mean, the planet is the source of all life. And it's astounding to me that that anybody, especially those who call themselves environmentalists, can prioritize saving this way of life over saving life on the planet. It's just monumentally stupid. So what we need to do is make our loyalty to the natural world, and all of your actions spring out from there. We can't know the future, and yes, there is a tipping point beyond which the passenger pigeons have been pushed and that they're extinct, and there are tipping points beyond which great auks have been pushed because they're extinct. So long as there exists one wild blade of grass, so long as there exists two wild bison, two elephants, two bonobos, so long as there exist members of any wild species, then we need to keep fighting for them. And I mean, I get this question quite a lot, and I just don't understand it. I mean, if some very bad people break into your home and they're going to try to kill everyone in your family, do you ask, where's the tipping point? No, you resist until you die, and you resist until they die. You resist until the threat is gone. And I don't understand any of this discussion of tipping point unless people are looking for a reason to stop resisting. The answer to this one is that we actually do have the technology to decarbonize the planet. It's called grass. It's called trees. It's called letting wild nature come back. It's called marshes. It's called seagrass. It's called phytoplankton. And it's called whales. And what we need to do is to stop killing them, and we need to let them come back. Nature is not only more complex than we think, it's more complex than we're capable of thinking. And forests know how to regrow. They don't need us to do it. They need us to get the hell out of the way. And same with grasslands. What we need to do, again, is change our loyalty away from the industrial system, the extractive system that brings goodies to us at the expense of the entire planet, and make it with the natural world. And then the natural world will do what the natural world does: create soil, create forests, create peat bogs, and that's how the carbon gets pulled out of the air. I think there's two answers to this. One of them is the same response that, or the same challenge that any artist faces, which is there's a cliche that writing is a great way to make a life and a terrible way to make a living. And everyone who, I mean, activists face this. I remember when we were doing timber sale appeals back when I lived in Spokane, Washington, I was very aware that there were however many of us who were doing these appeals on our own time, and those in the Forest Service who were putting them out were all doing this at work, making 30, 40, 50, 60,000 a year. And we're doing it volunteer. And that's part of the problem, is that those who push capitalism often get paid very well. And those who oppose it, it's always a labor of love. Very rarely do any people get rewarded for this. And it's the same with art. That, yeah, there are a few who can make a living at it, and in no way do I begrudge them that living. I think it's fabulous when a writer can make a living at it. It's really challenging. And I've met so many artists over the years who, when we get together to talk, the first thing we talk about is not, about your muse. It's like, how do you pay the rent? What do you do? What's your side gig that allows you to do that? So that's one challenge. And then the other challenge I find really fascinating is that I've gotten a lot of hate mail over the years. And a little bit of it has come from the right-wingers, which is, I thought it'd be more. I wasn't really expecting hate mail, but if there was going to be hate mail, I thought it was going to be primarily from pro-loggers or pro-miners or whatever. But for the most part, they haven't noticed me. But the group that I've gotten a lot of hate mail from over the last 20 years have primarily been what I would call lifestylists. So people who get really mad and say like at one talk, this is hate mail, but at one talk I did many years ago, a guy came up to me afterwards and said, "Do you have a bank account?" And I said, "Why are you asking?" He said, "Because if you have a bank account, I can ignore everything you say." And I was thinking, why don't you just ask me if I'm wearing a sweater? Because if I'm wearing a sweater, you can ignore everything I say. I have some strong disagreements with, say, Bill McKibben, and I disagree with a lot of what he's promoting, but I've seen people criticize him for flying to do talks. And that's just ridiculous, that whether he flies to do a talk is not the point, because you expect us to take on the dominant culture and to do it walking. I mean, I'm not actually interested in purity. I love this line by Lear Keith, that the task of an activist is not to navigate systems of oppressive authority with as much personal integrity as possible. The task of an activist is to confront and take down those systems of oppressive authority. And you do it using whatever means you can. So I've had lots of people. I've had anti-car activists get really mad at me because I drive a car. I've had vegans get really mad at me because I eat meat. I've had anarchists get mad at me because I'm against pornography. And I've had anarchists get mad at me because I don't believe that women should be forced to share their most vulnerable spaces with males. I've had all sorts of stuff that is just, it's just very interesting that I have gotten so much crap from people who believe that the solutions to these social problems are personal change. I understand the profound philosophical difference between believing that the way you change society is to compost or ride a bike, and those who believe that the way to change a society is to confront and take down those systems of oppressive authority. And I don't believe social change happens by example. So that's the thing, is if you disagree, and if you think that that the way to change society is to ride a bicycle, then ride a bicycle. And if you want, write a book about it. I think the biggest lie of all is that you can consume a planet and live on it. And you can consume a planet without destroying it. I've read that unquestioned assumptions are the real authorities of any culture. And one of the unquestioned assumptions is that you can have an extractive economy and a land base too. And that's just absurd. Every mine that has ever existed has destroyed groundwater. I don't understand how you can believe You can cut down a forest and still have a forest. Yes, trees will grow back, but those who live in this forest live in this forest. And life is unimaginably complex. There can be a billion creatures in a teaspoon of soil if you go down to the level of bacteria. And those bacteria might be radically different underneath the trees and 10 feet away in a little opening. It boggles my mind. It seriously makes me question human sentience that people can believe you can put in a dam without harming the river. I don't know what else to say. It's just, I seriously question human sentience. And this is a hugely important question. I do believe that artists can make a difference. And we see this through history as artists have helped change consciousness. I mean, Charles Dickens was crucial in raising awareness of the treatment of the poor. Humans are storytelling creatures, and the stories we tell affect how we act. We know this. I mean, the Bible has many, many stories about how humans are above non-humans and how men are above women. And you don't think that that has affected behavior? I was just last night thinking again about Richard Slotkin, who wrote an extraordinary series, and one of the books is called Gunfighter Nation, and it's one of his central theses is that he's looking at popular fiction from, let's say, the 1780s through 1970 or something. There was a pattern of, gosh, we white people want to fight clean, but the Indians fight dirty, which means we have to fight dirty just this once. It's like, well, we want to fight clean, but those Mexicans, they fight dirty, so we have to fight dirty just this once. Go to the 1870s, we white people want to fight clean, but those Indians, they fight dirty, so just this once we got to fight dirty. Let's move it up to the 1960s. We white people want to fight clean, but the Vietnamese, they fight dirty, so just this once we got to fight dirty. It's the Dirty Harry plot for a cop, with a cop show, that, well, we want to be clean, but the criminals fight dirty, so we got to fight dirty. And that has effects on how we behave. And I mean, what effect do you think it has on us that I've had to fight my publishers in order for me to be able to say the tree who does this as opposed to the tree that? So yes, artists can make a difference, but also one of the most important lines that I've ever written has been, every morning when I wake up, I ask myself whether I should write or blow up a dam. And the reason that's an important line is because art by itself doesn't accomplish anything in the real world. It takes two. It takes the artist, and it can be the same person, actually. After I say that every morning when I wake up, I ask myself whether I should write or blow up a dam, I go on to talk about how it's not words or a lack of words, it's killing salmon, it's dams. At some point, the dams need to physically come down. So art can be a catalyst, and it should be a catalyst, but a catalyst needs the primary chemicals to have the chemical reaction take place. So art can be a catalyst for change, but it's not the change itself. That change needs to come in the real physical world.